Hi, I'm Liron Cohen.
And I'm Mimi Torchin.
And you're listening to Lady Parts TV, the podcast.
Whee!
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
We're not cheerful. We're giddy.
Yes,
I don't know why we're giddy. Why are we giddy? I'm exhausted. That's
I'm
all.
kind of cheerful.
You are?
Yeah.
I'm exhausted.
I'm sorry. I know. Don't go.
Anyway, hi
Lola's
everybody.
fine. Hi everybody.
We have. I actually was about to say I don't quite know how that happened, but I do have a theory as to why our stats this week are going to blow your mind. We only tallied. Bye, Lola. We only.
I was sitting on her tail.
Oh well, I will move. We only tallied. Oh, hi, Louise.
Do you want to start over?
No.
Okay.
You're used to that, right?
Yes. I guess they are.
We tallied 11 primetime shows. We watched quite a few movies. That's why we only have 11 shows. Out of which, written or co-written by a woman, 9, which is 82%. And wait for it, directed by a woman, 10, which is 91%. And I do have a theory.
Yes.
We did binge on Mrs. America.
Yes, we did. And they were almost all, I think, all by women
Yes.
in both categories.
And we do have quite a bit we want to say about Mrs. America. So do stick around. It's going to be our last item of a very busy podcast. So let's get right.
Oh, that's like the
right
tease, right?
It is the tease.
Saving the last thing in the news for something you
usually
right in
Julie
the beginning,
Andrews.
or an animal story.
Okay, so we'll start with telling you about a new, very sweet movie. It's called Military Wives. It is available on Hulu and other digital platforms. Directed by Peter Cataneo and written by Roseanne Flynn and Rachel Tunnard. And the reason we watched it to begin
Kristen
with...
Scott Thomas, my beloved.
is the star.
She is the star.
Also Sharon Horgan, whom we absolutely love.
Yeah, she was great.
And a lot of other women we didn't recognize personally, but you might. Obviously, it's a British film. And it's the kind of film that normally we wouldn't necessarily go to because it's kind of formulaic, it's kind of sticky, but it's so sweet.
Yes, it is. And there's not a surprise in it.
No, it's all extremely predictable.
But it's very heartwarming.
But it is based on a true story,
Yes,
or inspired on true
is.
stories. And the story is... on a military base,
in Great Britain.
the men go to Afghanistan, and the women left behind, the wives and the kids, actually, have to busy themselves so that they can distract themselves, from worrying, and they form a choir. And at the end of the movie, you'll see the real choirs that this movie was inspired by.
Or that the movie was inspired by, but by this one particular chorus, inspired across the world.
Right. And it's a really, really lovely film. It's British, so there's lots of dark humor in it. And we absolutely adore the actresses. Kristen had a lovely role.
So great, and she looks so wonderful.
She looked fabulous.
Face intact and beautiful.
And you know what? At this particular moment in history, what's wrong with a little bit of feel good?
Exactly.
Some music, and it's all about the sisterhood. Usually when you watch war film, it's all about the brotherhood. This is about the sisterhood of the women who are
left behind.
Yes.
And I think this film, because I've been sort of following its trajectory, was meant for a wide release, and they intelligently, because it's a tiny little film that I think belongs on television. They wisely released it.
Anyway, so many movies are, so many studios are understanding right now that what's the point of holding on to their movies? Who knows?
Exactly.
When people
they'd let Black Widow go because I really want to see it.
At some point, they probably will. So anyway, this is called Military Wives. It is on Hulu and other digital platforms. So
I think we paid. Did we pay? We paid something.
No, it was on Hulu.
We didn't even pay for it.
No, because it's on Hulu. So check it out.
Okay.
Now we have a slew of documentaries to tell you about. A very, very different broad spectrum of documentaries. And starting with...
The Woman Who Loved Giraffes. My friends have been writing to me and saying, this is coming, don't miss it, because everybody who knows me knows that I am a giraffe freak. I kissed a giraffe in Africa.
And you liked it.
And I liked it. I really did. It is a lovely and surprising documentary. It was written and directed by Allison Reed, narrated, by Tatiana Maslany, who plays Ann Dagg, the heroine of this story when she was young.
She narrates her letters and her and her diaries.
And Victor Garber, who does commentary. It's a profile of practically, at the time, certainly, one and only giraffe researcher, Ann Dagg, who in 1956 went by herself to South Africa, found a lovely person on a big ranch who took her in, was also a conservationist of kinds. She wanted to observe and study giraffes firsthand. And there was nothing about them. She went, she stayed for several months.
I think a year even.
Yes?
Yeah.
Anyway, she became the only expert on giraffes. She wrote a book. It was
She wrote the book.
She wrote a book that was the only book that existed for people who were giraffe enthusiasts and conservationists. And what was so surprising is this wasn't a story about conservation as much as it was a story about women being held down and held back, and why the feminist movement, again, was so necessary for so many reasons. This woman could not advance. She could not, no matter, she published and published and published. She could not get tenure from any university. She was Canadian. She was largely left by the side, by science's side of the road, as roadkill. But unbeknownst to her, she had followers who thought that she was a god, more or less, because they loved giraffes, they wanted to conserve giraffes, and she was it. And she found out in her...
I think it had been about
60s
30 years.
or 70s or something, that she was invited to a conference that was going to honor her. And she came into this world. It was as though she were... William Shatner, and he didn't know that there were trekkers all around the world who loved him. And it just brought her back to life. It made her realize that her work had not been in vain. Also the sad news that giraffes were under attack as bushmeat, as all kinds of terrible things, habitat destruction. It's a very interesting, wonderful documentary, and I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you come for the giraffes, and then you stay for the feminism, and it was actually a really surprising movie.
It was
not
revelatory.
At all what we had thought. So this is The Woman Who Loved Giraffes. It is on Amazon Prime, available for a few dollars, and on other digital platforms. So look it up. We highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
Especially if you love animals. Now, I don't want to give this woman any more time than she already got, so we will briefly just talk about the documentary, aka Jane Roe, that was, it premiered on FX last week, but now it is available on Hulu, directed by Nick Sweeney. And this is the story of Jane Roe, Norma McCorvey, who was behind the lawsuit that gave us Roe versus Wade.
And for that, we have to always
absolutely thank her and honor her.
Yeah. And honor her, right? Even though,
it all went terribly wrong. She at some point switched her views from pro-choice to I don't want to say pro-life. It's anti-choice. And this was her deathbed confession, where she talks about why she made that switch. And what was interesting is you also saw they interviewed one person who was on the anti-choice side, who was just as you would think that person to be, that person who bombs abortion clinics. And then there was another clergy member from that side who was willing to speak the truth. And you learn how this was a marriage of both an opportunistic, deeply flawed person and hateful people who preyed on her for their own advantage. And it was fascinating
but horrifying.
Albeit nauseating. But kind of a must. And, we didn't know that Norma McCorvey was a lesbian until she actually had to marry Jesus. And then, no, she didn't marry Jesus. But she had a lovely, lovely girlfriend, Connie, who for some reason thought she was the moon and the stars and therefore stayed with her even after she dumped her for Jesus. And Connie, to me, is the real tragic heroine of this story. And I just loved her, and I felt so sorry for her. Anyway,
it's fascinating.
It's fascinating. You should watch it, but be warned, it will probably make you physically ill. AKA Jane Roe, and it is on Hulu or probably also on FX On Demand. Okay, one last documentary for today. This is, we are on the verge of Pride Month, June, my favorite month, also my birthday.
Also your birthday.
And this is a documentary called Homo Say, Who's Pushing Hate. It is available on digital starting June 2nd, written and directed by Craig Bettendorf. And it's supposed to be all about homophobia, the origins of homophobia, how homophobia became institutionalized. And if you're hearing noises, that's Lola again. It has some good ideas. We certainly would not recommend it. My problem with it is that it's done extremely amateurish.
Very amateur.
Not unprofessionally. And
it lacks cohesion.
It lacks cohesion. It lacks a focus. And my main problem with it, though, is that it lacks a sense of authority, because they were missing on some important things. When you do a documentary, you have to back
experts.
You need experts. You need to name your experts, which half the time they didn't even do. They didn't say who was who and whom was what. And you need a variety of views. You need to back up your opinions.
They made a mistake because this guy who directed it also directed
a web series.
A gay men's web series, and he used 3 of his actors as his interviews. And they were, except for the baby boomer, who was very.
I think what he wanted to
authoritative.
show,
he understood what had happened. He'd lived through it.
He wanted to show, I think, the difference between how baby boomers saw things and how millennials, who take more things for granted, see things. But his millennials sounded so stereotypically millennials,
and dumb,
and he obviously used this kind of as a vehicle to promote his show. The footage was very raw and rough. They did find some good archival footage that was very interesting.
Very interesting.
I felt they lingered on it a bit too much, to the point where I really, really was like cringing on the inside. Some of that stuff you will not believe actually is stuff that is real, homophobia and institutionalized homophobia. So again, not without merit, but to me this would have been a good pitch reel to give to somebody who can take it and actually Lola to give it to somebody who could actually make it professionally. So this is Homo Say, Who's Pushing Hate, available digitally as of June 2nd. And now we have 2 heads up for you before we get to the discussion of Mrs. America. Stay with us.
I'd already forgotten about it. So half these people have already went and had lunch.
No!
So this is the season 2 of Dirty John, and this is the Betty Broderick story.
But the Dirty John is an anthology series.
Yes, right. It started off with the actual Dirty John,
right,
and they kept the name of the series.
So that people know what the hell they're watching.
It's all about women who have been wronged by men, I guess, because this is another woman who was wronged by a man and who, in her own way, took things in her own hands. Betty Broderick, who you may remember if you're old enough, there was, I think, a Lifetime movie made of this starring
you said Meredith
Baxter. And as I recall, it was very well done. It's a 2-episode premiere, June 2nd on USA, and created by Alexander Cunningham, so yay. Betty Broderick was a Southern California model wife who married a handsome husband and supported him while he got 2 degrees. And, of course, once he got wealthy and on his own and didn't need her anymore, he fell in love with his younger secretary.
Oh, such a cliche.
Such a cliche. And she was slowly driven kind of mad by this. She didn't just roll over and play dead. And she got her revenge. And
was it served cold?
I don't think it was very cold. I think it was pretty sizzling.
Ooh.
And she went through a lot. She was ridiculed. She was. She went through a lot, but I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. It stars Amanda Peet and Christian Slater. And
the first one was excellent.
The first one was sublime.
Connie Britton.
Horrifying, absolutely horrifying, but with a more or less happy ending.
Yeah, it is. They are. I guess the anthology will all the seasons, of which I hope there'll be many, are based on true stories. Which is the real mind-boggling thing that, about it, because when you watch it, it's like. Oh.
Anyway, we can only tell you to keep an eye out for it. We can't necessarily recommend it because we haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a heads up.
But I'm certainly going to be there.
Right. So this is Dirty John, the Betty Broderick Story. A 2-episode premiere is going to happen June 2nd on USA. Make sure to check it out.
Okay, me again. This is a series coming up on AMC May 31st, this Sunday. It's almost here.
Yeah.
3-part miniseries.
Although we will be busy that night watching Kelly O'Hara.
Well, we can tape this. That's okay.
Well, we will.
Thank goodness it's on television and we can record it. It's called Quiz. And it stars Matthew McFadden, Sean Clifford, Helen McCrory, who I adore, and the ubiquitous Michael Sheen, who seems to be everywhere. And this, I don't know if you'll remember this story. I remember the one from the cheating scandal and $64,000 question very, very well. We all watched that show. It was a big scandal, and they made
on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
This is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The original one was the $64,000 question.
Oh, okay.
Yes. No, it was before.
Because Millionaire also has $64,000 question.
No, this was the $64,000 question, and the guy was fed the answers. So they made a movie of it with Ray Fiennes called Quiz Show. But this is a story of Charles Ingram, who was a former British Army major, and he was caught cheating on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
The British version.
And it's fairly recent.
Based on a true story.
And I can't wait to see it because I want to see how he cheated, whether he was also fed answers or I can't imagine what other way there would be, because he wasn't particularly smart, is what I think the preview, the trailer,
makes it seem.
Yeah, makes it seem. How would he? I think that's one of the things that alerted them to it, because it's really, where did he get this knowledge?
Well, it's a miniseries. It's only three episodes, so it's going to be nice and condensed. And I love Helen McCrory.
Oh, I adore Helen McCrory. Those of you who were fans of Penny Dreadful, she was fantastic as the vampire witch mother on that show. I'm eager to see her in this.
So this is Quiz on AMC Sunday May 31st. Finally, we arrive at the Mrs. America discussion.
Wow.
And Lola. I need to take a picture of Lola here with the microphone. Mrs. America premiered 9 weeks ago, because this was 9 episodes, and we just watched the last one, the finale. And let me tell you, this seemed like it would be right up our alley. First of all, it's about the women's movement. It's starring a phenomenal cast of your dreams, or of our dreams anyway. Cate Blanchett, Rose Byrne, Margot Martindale, Tracy Ullman, Sarah Paulson, Elizabeth Banks, Uzo Aduba, Jean Tripplehorn, Melanie Linsky, Eric Greiner. I mean, really,
Jean Tripplehorn, John Slattery.
Kaylee Carter, whom we didn't know, was wonderful playing sad. Pamela. It was created by Davy Waller, who is an alum of Mad Men. Mm-hmm. So really, I mean, there was nothing about it that we could ever imagine. Well, except for Phyllis Schlafly, we could imagine not liking her.
And we didn't like her.
We loathe her. But I
didn't even like Cate Blanchett. I loved her acting.
But with renewed understanding of her intelligence.
Respect of her mind and what she...
Well,
yeah, anyway,
go
ahead.
Anyway... We watched the first one, and we just could barely bring ourselves to watch the second one. We watched the second one, we could barely bring ourselves to watch the third one. I don't know if it was the third or the fourth that finally broke the ice, but I think that the reason was the first 3 episodes. First of all, there's...
first one in particular, and second.
Right, so every episode kind of focuses on a different person of the groups. The first one is all about Phyllis Schlafly, the second one is all about Gloria, and then we have Shirley Chisholm and Bella Abzug and Betty Friedan, and then eventually we have Sarah Paulson, whose character is a completely made-up character, but she stole the show, and her episode 8, is so the
wonderful. Best. It really is. Now, by the way, this is about how the ERA was defeated.
So, exactly. Exactly. So what happened was the first couple of episodes, because the first one is Phyllis and the second one is Gloria, they're so heavy on the politics, and I shouldn't say we were feeling so deeply frustrated
and enraged
and angry, and we just kind of didn't know what to do with these emotions as we sit there and relive something that we barely can stand knowing that is a part of our history.
Right, and that it's still, it needed, at the end of the end of the series, 3 more states to ratify it.
It got 3 more states recently, but Congress. The House of Representatives passed but they said the Senate
Mitch
would never do
McConnell
that.
said, "I doubt that this will ever come to the floor."
So the level of anger, the degree to which we felt so like we wanted to punch somebody, I think that's what made it so hard for us to watch. And Phyllis Schlafly, even though the first episode already makes
it did humanize her a little bit, though.
Yes, it humanized
not
her
later.
On,
not later, but in the
beginnings.
It makes it possible for you to actually sort of stick with it because she wasn't exactly who you thought she was.
But this is the irony, because it's kind of like Hitler becoming a dictator by using all the tools of democracy. She became an anti-feminist by using all the tools that feminism gave her and all of the rights and privileges, quote unquote, that feminism achieved for her. Right. So as Bella Abzug says at some point, she possibly is the most liberated woman in America.
The biggest feminist in America.
Right. Her agenda was always to advance herself. She was actually quite intelligent. She studied nuclear physics or something.
Not nuclear physics.
Nuclear something.
Yes, she really, really was an expert on armaments and disarmament.
But nobody would give her the time of day because she was a woman. They let her take notes because she had the best penmanship. And so she took on an agenda that she could be considered an expert in because she was a woman and this was women's issues.
A mother.
But once we hit like the 3rd or 4th episode, first of all, they started focusing on some of the other characters, and some
of our characters.
Oh, it was all about, besides Phyllis Schlafly and Sarah Paulson's character, everybody else that they focused on was from the women's liberation movement,
and it was fascinating.
It was so great. There was a lot of, by the way, about lesbians and gays, on both sides, and it was just, these women that we admire. These women that,
and
we
will
owe
admire
so much
them
to.
more.
Exactly.
What they had to face. And I loved the way Rose Byrne played Gloria Steinem. She was so underplayed. She was so kind. She was just everything that anti-feminists don't think women are. They think women should be.
Right.
But with a purpose.
She was all of that, but
with
a
purpose.
Exactly.
And
I want to say that it's very, I can't even imagine how daunting it must have been to take on playing Gloria Steinem, an icon who is living and good on you, Rose.
Yes, and Tracy Ullman was a fantastic Betty Friedan.
Yeah.
Margot was an amazing Bella Abzug. Now, I grew up with
Shirley Chisholm
in the middle of Bella Abzug's rise in politics, rise and fall, I might say. I even attended at the Felt Forum at Madison Square Garden for $20, a fundraiser that Barbra Streisand was the final act in, raising money for Bella. So at first I thought, but the more I watched, the better Margot embodied her.
And we loved Elizabeth Banks.
Oh, she was great.
We loved Eric Rayner was phenomenal. Uzo Aduba as Shirley Chisholm.
It was one of her better performances, I think.
But Sarah Paulson, as a completely made-up character, again, stole the show. And what a brilliant device it was to put her in there, in the middle.
Don't tell them why.
I'm not going to tell you at all, but I'm just going to tell you that if you felt like us, and in the first couple of episodes you felt that it was just too demoralizing, stick with it. We binged on practically the whole season.
We know we lost
in a couple of days,
but still, It was...
And the very, very last scene does give you satisfaction.
Yes, you do get satisfaction. And to tell you how horrible Phyllis Schlafly is, Leron kept on saying when we'd see certain shots of Cate Blanchett, oh, she's so beautiful. I say, she looks like a gargoyle to me. She's not beautiful. She looks awful. She imbued her with so much... She was like the devil. I couldn't... She didn't even look...
I just don't know how...
She looked horrible.
Can we just give Emmys to every single person in that cast? Can we just... Because I don't know how they're going to have Emmys left, and it bothers me that they can't all have Emmys.
Well, I think that this show was made for the SAG Ensemble Award.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine, and I have many shows I love, that any other show would be more worthy of the Ensemble Award.
We might have to add an Ensemble Award to the Lady Parts TV
I'd be happy
awards.
to do that.
All right, we'll have to do that.
Guess who won?
Well, you get to vote. You'll get to vote, but they'll for sure be nominated. Let's just say that. Anyway, Mrs. America, if you haven't seen it yet, it is in full on Hulu now. And also, I will just to wrap it up because we are way over time, but I just want to say two things. First of all, Cate Blanchett had an op-ed in the New York Times, and
brilliant.
Read it because she's just, in addition to being one of the most stunningly beautiful women in the world and one of the best actresses we have, she's also such an intelligent and beautiful person on the inside. Secondly, and we're not going to get into that whole debate, but I just want to give a little bit, one point of view that Gloria Steinem asked to put when you're watching this. And this is to remember that even though this specific series focuses on how a woman and her, religious followers really did stay in the way of the women's movement and of women's rights, Gloria does want to remind you that on a whole, it's men who are really the ones who stand in the way of women's rights. And it's so easy to pit women against one another. But ultimately, it's men that we have to fight against to get more rights. Okay? So we just want to put it out there.
By the way, she hadn't watched the show yet.
No, she's just saying in general that she has, throughout her life, has seen society pitting women against one another because it's so much easier than to distract from who is really standing in the way of women's rights. And she just wants to remind people, this is very valid. Everything that's in here is very valid. But just to remind people, men are the real problem, okay? So, that seems to be like a very fitting way to end our podcast. Men are the real problem.
The real problem.
Alrighty then. Thank you for joining us. We have lots more to tell you. We left it for next week that we're going to tell you more about.
Hope you're still here.
Hope you're still here. And that's it. Stay safe. Be good. Have fun. And we'll see you next week on Pride Month.
Yay!